Good evening. Today's Daf Yomi is sponsored by Yehuda Greenwood. B'zchus refuah shlema for Bailey Yentl Bas Chaya Rochel. Refuah shlema. We are in the middle of a conversation. We were listing the various circumstances in which a Navi Sheker might be liable to a Misa penalty. And we were listing the circumstances where he might be liable only to a Misa B'dei Shemayim. And we were talking about a Navi that prophesies something that he never heard. And we were giving an example of the story of Tzidkiah ben Kenana. And Tzidkiah ben Kenana was a Navi that was asked by Achav, because Yehoshaphat, who was the king of Yehuda, and Achav was the king of Yisrael, and Achav wanted to wage war against Aram, and he needed an ally. So he was trying to convince Yehoshaphat to come with him, and Yehoshaphat said, well, let's go ask a Navi if it's a good idea or not. And they had asked various Nevi'im in order to be able to get the okay to go. One of the Nevi'im that they asked to go was a fellow named Tzidkiah ben Kenana, and Tzidkiah ben Kenana had a prophecy that included creating some kind of horns that he suggested that Aram was going to become gored upon, indicating the success of the battle. And that was a false prophecy because he never had that prophecy. But the question was, but he was tricked, because the story goes that Achav had wronged Navos in stealing his field, and Navos got killed. And now Hashem, in order to convince Achav to go to battle against Aram, which would eventually lead to Achav getting killed, he made a all call for anybody who wanted to volunteer to trick this Navi, Tzidkiah ben Kenana, into having some kind of a prophecy that would entice Achav into battle. And Navos tricked the Navi and was, I guess, came back from the, as a disembodied soul, came to Tzidkiah ben Kenana and misled him, and he thought he was giving a prophecy that was real, and it was not real. So the question is, why would you punish? Why would you think that Tzidkiah ben Kenana is in the wrong when he was tricked? He was tricked by the spirit of Navos into giving this false prophecy. So that's where we are. We are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines from the bottom, and 3 words from the end of the line. Havalei lameduk. The last word on the line is lameduk if you're trying to find the line. Havalei lameduk. So the question is, Tzidkiah ben Kenana, how did he do the wrong thing? If he was tricked, the answer is Havalei lameduk. He should have investigated further to find out whether his prophecy was valid or not. Kid Rabbi Yitzchak, like Rabbi Yitzchak says, how is a prophet supposed to investigate the validity of the visions that he's having? Dam Rabbi Yitzchak, signon echad ola lekama neviim. Ve'ein shni neviim misnavim besignon echad. So that a spiritual inspiration gets revealed to many prophets simultaneously. Meaning several prophets will have the same nevuah, but they don't prophesize it the same way. Each of them have their own version. Echad Ovad b'signon echad. Ovadia Amar. So Ovadia says, as we see by Ovadia, that he says Zidon libcha hasiacha. So that he's prophesizing about the eventual destruction of, I think it's Rome that he's prophesizing about. Who was he prophesizing about? Oh, Edom, sorry, yeah, about Rome. So he's prophesizing about Edom, about Rome, their destruction, and he has the prophecy, Ovadia has the prophecy that the intentional willfulness of your heart has misled you and you're going to be destroyed. The Yirmiyah Amar, and Yirmiyahu has another prophecy also about Rome that's identical or similar. Tiflotztecha hisi otcha zedon libecha. That the haughtiness that others have been afraid of you, that you cast this fear upon others, is the willfulness of your heart. and therefore you're going to be destroyed. So therefore, these two prophecies about Rome are very similar, and the reason why is because many prophets have the same prophecy. They have, I guess it's almost like a radio signal goes out, and all the prophets are in tune with the signal, but their interpretation, the words that they use to express it, may be slightly different. And that's what we have here by Ovadia and Yirmiyahu, that they're both prophesying about the same thing, but it is slightly different in how it comes out. V'hani midik amri kulahu kadodi, shmamina lo klum ka'amri. And what happened was Achav was trying to prove to Yehoshaphat that the prophecy was correct. So they went to Navi after Navi after Navi, and every Navi said this exact same phrase, the exact same words, saying that Aram's gonna die, and every single one. Well, that should have been a red flag, because all the prophets should have said something slightly different. They could have all given the same idea that Aram was going to lose the war, but they shouldn't have had the exact same words. The fact that every prophet was having the exact same words should have indicated that the source wasn't a nevuah, but it was some kind of other trickery. In this case, Navos's disembodied soul that was giving a false report to the Nevi'im. So, Dilma lo hava yadale lahad Rabbi Yitzchak. So he says, well, maybe that's not really Tzidkiah ben Kanana's fault. Maybe this statement, Rabbi Yitzchak made this statement about Nevi'im, much, at some future point in history. Maybe that wasn't well known. Maybe people weren't aware that prophets are not all supposed to be saying the identical thing. So Yehoshaphat hava hasam. The Kamar lahu, that isn't an excuse, because Yehoshaphat, the king of Yehuda, who was seeking the prophecy, he was there, and he was telling them exactly that. Tichsiv, the pasuk says, "Vayomer Yehoshaphat ha'im po navi." So Yehoshaphat said, after they kept asking navi after navi after navi, he said, "I need one more navi." He kept asking, "I need another navi. Well, why does he keep asking? How many neviim do you need if they're all saying the exact same thing, that the battle's going to be successful? Why does Yehoshaphat keep asking for another navi?" The answer is, so he says, "Is there another navi?" So Amar lei ha'ika kol hani. He says, well, look, we had all these neviim. What's wrong with all these? So Amar lei kach mekubani mi beis avi. This is what I have as a tradition from my father's house. Mi beis avi abba, from my grandfather's house. Signon echad olo lekam neviim. There can be one transmission of prophecy to many neviim. Ve'in shnei neviim misnavim b'signon echad. But the neviim themselves shouldn't be saying the exact same thing. So Yehoshaphat was already skeptical of what the Nevi'im were saying himself. So he knew that. So therefore, when Yehoshaphat was going around saying, I don't like this, I need to hear another nevuah, this does not sound like a nevuah to me. And then eventually Tzidkiah ben Kanana comes along and he embellishes it, but he should have known that his nevuah was not a nevuah, because it was also coming out exactly the same as everybody else. Right? So that is the case of testifying, giving a nevuah that he never heard. Hamisnave mashalo nemar lo. What is the case of a navi who gives a prophecy for something that was never said to him, meaning it was said to another navi? So Kigon Hananya ben Ozur. This is the circumstance of the prophecy of Hananya ben Ozur. And what happened to him is Dekai Yirmiyah b'Shuk Elyon. What happened was there's an upper city and a lower city in Yerushalayim in the first Beis Hamikdash era. And what was happening is Yirmiyah was in the upper city, and he was in this upper marketplace, and he was giving a nevuah. V'kamer, he said, Ko amar Shem tzvakos, hini shoveres keshes Elam. I'm going to destroy the bow of Elam. And Elam is was a nation that was assisting in the destruction of the Jewish people. A nation that was an enemy of the Jews, that was assisting in the Babylonians that were afflicting the Jews. So what happened is he's testifying about how Elam is going to get destroyed, and Nasa Hananya kal v'chomer ba'atzmo. Hananya heard the prophecy. It wasn't said to him, but he decided to use that prophecy and go one step further. Ma Elam shelo el la'azor es Bavel. Elam only came to help Babylonia. So Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu nishoveres keshes Elam. If Yirmiyah is telling us that Elam is in trouble, they're about to be destroyed, kastim atzmon, the Babylonians themselves, alachas kama v'kama, for sure they're getting destroyed. So therefore, also ihu b'shuk hatachton, he went in the lower marketplace, where I guess they had the upper marketplace where the rich people were shopping, the lower marketplace where the rest. He went in there, and he said, "Kol Amar Hashem, Shivarti O Melech Bavel, I have destroyed the yoke of the king of Babylonia." So he started telling this prophecy. It wasn't his prophecy. He just derived that prophecy from what Yirmiyahu had said, who was authentically a prophet. How could you say that that's a prophecy that was said to his friend? This prophecy about Bavel was also not said to Yirmiyahu either. That's not a prophecy that was said to another Navi. The prophecy was about Elam. It had nothing to do with Babylonia. So the answer is, well, because once we're told that Kal V'chomer is a acceptable method of learning Torah and learning things, so he was, in fact, he was basically taking something that one Navi said, using a Kal V'chomer, which is a valid method of derivation, and extending that rule and making a prophecy. But his prophecy was originally sourced in something that wasn't said to him. Okay, so hu nihu lo namar lo. So, but it was never so. So therefore, it's command to itmar le dummy hu nihu lo namar lo. So that item is like it was said, but it was never said to him. Right? He was not the one that that the prophecy was given to. It was given to Yirmiyahu. Okay, next one is hamesnave b'shem avodos kochavim. Somebody who gives a prophecy in the name of an idolatry. That's kigon nevi habal. That is the prophets of Baal in the times of Eliyahu and Navi, that these Baal prophets were telling the Jews what to do. They were saying the Avodah Zarah, that the Baal wants you to do this, the Baal wants you to do that, and Eliyahu and Navi had to fight them, but those are those Nevi'im. HaKovesh es nevuaso, what's the circumstance of somebody who gets a prophecy and he doesn't want to tell it, right? And he gets Misa B'dei Shemayim. This is a case of Misa B'dei Shemayim. That's Kagon Yonah ben Amittai. That's the story of Yonah, right? Yonah is told that Nineveh is going to be destroyed, and he doesn't want to tell anybody about it. So he goes and runs away. So that's where he gets Misa. He's supposed to get Misa B'dei Shemayim. Ma'mevater al divrei Navi, somebody who doesn't listen to what a Navi tells him to do. That's Kagon Chavre de Micha. That's like the story of Micha's friend. Pei Tes Amud Beis. Dichsiv. The story goes like this in Sefer Malachim. So it happens like this. There was once a man who was one of the prophets. Amar el Re'ehu bidvar Hashem. He told his friend, in the name of Hashem, Hakeni no. You have to hit me, right? That's what Hashem wants you to do. Hashem wants you to hit me. Uksiv, and then it says, Vayima'ina ish lakoso, and the person refused. He didn't want to hit him.
Right? Why would he even say that Hashem wants to do this?
It's a great question, right? That was I'm not exactly sure of exactly what's going on. That's he says. This is Maharam, Olam Melchama Yisrael, Mechan of Yom, Melchama Yisrael, Shilchem Yonsehu, Acha, B'shtem Melchamos, Ula Acha Melchama Shnia, nothing is a Miradar, B'shalom, Bazar Karsim B'Beis, Acha Kim, Tziva Michael, B'shem Hashem, as Chavero, V'Hakenino, L'Achashim, Ke'arye, I don't know. I have to go through this. The story is why would he have told? What was it that he was? Sometimes the prophets are told to experience certain things as what do you call it? As illustrations of the prophecy that they're making.
They're going to say as humans.
Yeah. So right, but he was told that he would anyway. But that's when the Navi told him, "You got to hit me," and the guy said, "No, I don't want to hit you. I'm my friend. You're a Navi. I'm not doing it." Uksiv, and then it says, Vayomer lo, and the Navi said to his friend, Yana shelo shamato, since you didn't listen. So the story is that the friend walked out of the room, and then a lion attacked him, and he got killed. Because Misa B'dei Shemayim, because he didn't listen to the Navi told him to hit him, and he didn't do it. The Navi shavar al divrei atzmo, no, so that's that story. How about a Navi that doesn't listen to his own nevuah? That's Kagon Ido. That is the story of Ido Hanavi. Dichsiv, the pasuk says, Ki chen tziva osi, right? That Ido is told that after he finishes his the prophecy that he has, he's supposed to not eat or drink, and he's supposed to go home and without eating or drinking on the way. Uksiv, okay. So then he says, then what happens in the story is Vayomer lo gamani navi kamocha. He meets an older fellow along the way. And this older fellow says, you got to come into my house. I'm inviting you in to eat and drink. And Ido says, I can't. And the fellow says, but I'm a Navi just like you. And so I'm telling you that I want you to come in and eat and drink. Uksiv vayashev ito. So then the pasuk says, Edo in fact listened to this other Navi and he followed the fellow in. Uksiv vayelech vayimsaehu aryeh, that Edo got punished because he ate and drank on his way, even though he was told himself not to, and he got attacked by a lion and killed. So again, Misa b'dei Shemayim for the Navi who didn't listen to what it was that Hashem told him to do in a Nevuah.
Because the other person said he was...
Even the other Navi said, I'm a Navi, and I'm telling you I'm invited. So that's what he got tricked into it. But he was supposed to listen to his Nevuah, and he didn't.
Wow.
Right? Tani Tana Kame de Rav Chisda. So, right? Exactly. It's not like these are bad guys, right? He's not trying to sure what exactly to do.
Yeah. I feel like maybe, like, logically speaking, like, he'd probably get off, but I guess he could.
He's a Navi, right? You got to deal with these Navim harshly, right? Tani Tana Kame de Rav Chisda. They taught the following Bryce in front of Rav Chisda: Hakofesh es Nevuaso, Loke. Somebody who holds his Nevuah back, doesn't tell anybody about it, he gets Malchus. Amar Le, Man de Achel Tamri Ba'arbala Lucky. So he says that somebody who eats the leftover dates in a bowl should get Malchus, right? In other words, there's no sin in that. So somebody who gets a nevuah, right? So then he's commenting that there's no real avera in that. Koveshus nevuah. So there's no real avera in that. So why should somebody just does something completely innocuous like eating a date because you get a So man masrile, right? After all, where's the warning, right? If he's not warned, how is he supposed to get a punishment for doing that? So Rabbi Chavre Nevi. So Abaye says his friends that are other Nevi'im, they're aware of the Nevuah and they would warn him. They say, hey, we know you have a Nevuah, you're supposed to be telling people, and they wouldn't. So Mino Yodi, so the question is, how do the other Nevi'im know what he got as a prophecy? So Abaye says, Dichsiv ki lo ya'aseh Hashem Elokim davar ki im gila sodo, that Hashem doesn't do anything unless he reveals his secrets. And again, this is the same idea that all the prophets are able to understand that what Nevuah has been spread around. Now, they're not supposed to be telling anybody except the Navi who is designated as the Navi who receives it. But the other Nevi'im are aware of the fact that this Navi got a Nevuah and he's supposed to be telling it. And so they're able to warn him. Vidil Mahadri Bey, so maybe Hashem changed his mind. How do they know? Maybe, Hashem changed his mind, gave him a Nevuah, and then he's not. The Nevuah is repealed. So im Isa dehadri Bey odu havu modi lekulu. So if Hashem changed his mind, then they would know that. Right? Now, the Nevi'im are aware, so therefore they should know that. So modi lekulu Nevi, then all the Nevi'im would know that. V'ha Yonah, what about Yonah? Dehadri Bey v'lo edihu. What about the story of Yonah? The story of Yonah is that he was told that Nineveh is going to get destroyed. And then in the end, Nineveh didn't get destroyed. So Hashem changed his mind. All the other Nevi'im didn't become aware of that. So the answer is Yonah meikara Ninveh nepeches amrile. So what happened is there was no change in the nevuah. The original nevuah was that Yonah was told that in 40 days Ninveh is going to be overturned. Ihu lo yoda ilatova ilera. That phrase Ninveh is going to be overturned could be interpreted two ways. Either it's going to be overturned in the sense it's going to be destroyed, or it's going to be overturned in the sense that they're going to do tshuva. So therefore, it was left up to subject to interpretation, depending on what circumstances were going to happen. And Hashem was sort of hinting at the idea that there are two potential outcomes here. So therefore, that nevuah never really changed. It was consistent. It looked like there was a warning of destruction, but the fact that Nineveh changed their ways was also ended up being the real meaning of the nevuah.
Do they get punished because it's their purpose to tell the nevuah, or because of the outcome that, like, why do they get punished? Like, does a Kohen Gadol get punished for not serving the Beis Hamikdash because that's his?
This is a direct, specific command. In other words, he is told to reveal this, right?
Oh, I see. Oh, so you're going against Hashem's.
Yeah. Yes, you're going against his express command. Hamavatra al divrei navi. So what about somebody who who doesn't pay attention to the words that a Navi does. Mino yode diyonish. So how would you know? No, that's not fair. The guy got told, hit me, I'm a Navi, and the guy's like, Hashem told me to. So what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to do that? Like just because Hashem told you to? How do I know Hashem told you? What told you to do? What? How do I know that? So the answer is Diyahiv le os, because the Navi has to be able to give you a sign. He shows you, he proves it to you by saying some other kind of, like he says, he shows you some kind of miracle or something to indicate that he's in fact a prophet, right? Tells like the Yankees are going to win tonight or something. And then once that happens, so then you know that he's a Navi, then okay. And Micha, what about Micha? Delo Yohiv Leos, he told the guy to hit him, and he didn't give him any sign. There's no pasuk doesn't say that he gave him a sign. The Yanish and the guy got punished for it. So Heicha de Muchsak Shani, the answer is it's different. When the guy is a well-known Navi, you know that he's a Navi, so then he doesn't have to give you a sign every time he tells you something, right? So he's known already. Because if you don't say that, Avraham Bahar HaMoriah, Hechi Shama La Yitzchak. Because otherwise, why did Yitzchak listen to Avraham Avinu when he was told to come to get slaughtered by the Akedas Yitzchak? Why is Yitzchak even listening? You're going to do murder. So Yitzchak should say, no, thank you. Why does he go along with it? Right? That's not a good reason to allow your father to kill somebody, right? So the answer is, because Avram was a well-known Navi, and so if he said that I got a nevuah from Hashem, he went along with it. Eliyahu Bahara Carmel, Hechi Samchi Alei. Also Eliyahu in Hara Carmel, he tells the Jewish people to bring sacrifices outside of the Beis Hamikdash, which is a prohibition. You're not allowed to bring sacrifice outside the Beis Hamikdash, but because he was a well-known as a Navi, so they listened to him. Avdi shchutei chutz. They did the sacrifices outside the Beis Hamikdash.
Which is two problems. You can't do a sacrifice outside of the Beis Hamikdash,
right?
Plus whatever Eliyahu told them to do.
Well, the point that Eliyahu told them to do the sacrifices out of the Beis Hamikdash. So the question is, how did they do what they're not supposed to do? The answer is heicha de muchsak shani. That once you know that the guy is a Navi, then it's different, right? You're supposed to listen to him. Since we're on this topic of Akedas Yitzchak, let's talk about Akedas Yitzchak for a moment. And it says it was after these things, and Hashem tested Avraham. So, question is, after what things? Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra, Achar Dvarav Shel Satan. What happened is Hashem was having a conversation with the Satan, and that's what caused the Akedah. Dichsiv, the pasuk says, Vayigdal HaYeled Vayigamel, that Yitzchak grew up and he was weaned, right? He was already grown up, and Hashem and Avram made a party, right? And celebrating Yitzchak's weaning ceremony. Amar Satan lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Satan says to Hashem, Ribono Shalom, Zakin zeh chananto lemea shana pri-beten. So he says, you just did an amazing thing, Hashem. You just gave this 100-year-old man his first son, right? That's an amazing thing. Mikol Sudashasa lo haya lo tor echad o gozo echad. He had this whole huge meal. He couldn't find one pigeon, one dove to make a sacrifice. Couldn't figure out. No sacrifices to you in the whole meal, right? So, so that's not a right. Should just say thank you. Just say thank you. In the words of our friends from the South, right? Just say thank you. So. Right? So Amar Lo, so he says, Klumasa El Bishvil Beno. So he says, well, the whole feast was what? Because he loves his son so much, right? It's because of his son. Imani Omer Lo Zavach has bincha lefanai miyad zovcho. If I were to tell him to sacrifice his son, he'd do it, right? And everything is for me. I know that. So miyad velo kim nisas Avram. So that's where the test of the Akedah came from, right? Wow. So Vayomer, and he said, Kachnas bincha, take your son. Amr B'Shimon Barabba says, Ein na eluloshin bakasha. The word na, which can be translated as now or please, means that it's a bakasha request. Mashal Melch Basar V'Dam. This is like, imagine a human king. She'amdu alav milchamos harbe. There was a king. He had a soldier who would help him in many various wars and conquests. And this guy was this strong guy, and he would win all the battles for him. Liyamim, after several days, there was a great war that came upon this king. The king said to him, I need you to stand for me again in this war. Because if not, everybody's going to say, that your service to me in the past was not significant. When I really needed you, you weren't there. So please be there for me at this time. So that's Afakadosh Baruch Hu Amar Avraham. That is what Hashem said to Avraham as well. So Nisisicha become Nisyonos. I have tested you with many tests. V'amadeta bekulan, and you have succeeded in all of those tests. Achshav amod li b'nisayon zeh. Just one more big test. Stand by me for this one test. Shelo yomru ein mamish b'rishonim, so that people will not say that his service was incomplete in the original tasks. Right? This kind of really shows how dedicated you are. Then it says, Hashem told Avram, "Es bincha, take your son." Beis banim yeshli. Avram says, "But I have two sons. Es yechidcha, your only son." This is famous because Rashi quotes it. Ze yachid li'imo, v'ze yachid li'imo. He says, "Your only son." He says, "Well, each one is their only son to their mother, right? Each one has a different mother. They're both only sons." Asher ahavta, the one that you love. Tarvaihu rechim niluhu. I like both of my sons. Es Yitzchak, take Yitzchak. V'kol kach lama. Why did Hashem go through this whole thing? Why didn't he just tell him to take Yitzchak in the first place? So that he wouldn't really shock Abraham's mind. You want to shock him by jumping right to that.
I'm really shocked.
Okay, so there's it. Still shocking. So now, Kadmu Satan L'derech. Avram goes along the way. The Satan goes out to meet Avraham, right? Now he's got to stop Avram from succeeding. He's got the test in place. Now the Satan's got to stop Avram. Amr lo, so he says, Hanisodach davar elecha tla'ah, hine yasarta rabim v'yadim rafos, techazek kosha yekimun malich. So, second. So these psukim, these psukim come from Sefer Eov, right? Now, the Sefer Eov has nothing to do with Akedas Yitzchak. But what the Gemara is trying to do is use psukim in Eov in order to illustrate the conversation, the story that happened by Avram, because it's a great way to illustrate a story by using psukim. So the pasuk is, the psukim go, Hanisol davar elecha til right? If you love Hashem so much, right? That if Hashem loved you so much to test you with something like this, then hine yasarta rabim v'yadayim rafos techazek. So then, with your words, you have been makariv so many people. You have brought so many people close to Hashem. You've made so many balei tshuva. Ki atavo elecha v'teileh. And now Hashem comes and He's going to destroy all of your work. Right? In other words, because what Avram was telling everybody, Hashem is merciful, Hashem is great, you should serve Hashem, it's a great thing to serve Hashem, He's just, He's kind, and then everybody's going to ruin all your work, because now you're going to kill your son, and you're going to tell everybody, well, why'd you do that? Well, Hashem told me. Well, nobody's going to want to believe in what you were teaching before, so it's going to destroy your whole life's work. That's what the Satan was pointing out. So, and Amar lo, Avram answers back, Ani, Bitu Amarlo ani bitumi elech. I'm going to go in my simple way. I just got to do what Hashem told me to do. Whatever happens is going to be for the best. I trust. Amarlo halo yirascha kis lo sacha. So he says, but the Satan says to him, you should trusting in your fear of Hashem that it will protect you. And now you're going to lose out because of it, right? You trust Hashem; it's gonna fail you. Amar lo. So Avram said, "Zechor na mihu naki avad." He says it's not possible that somebody who is clean is going to be destroyed. That's just not how the world works. That's not justice. I'm not going to lose out if I'm serving Hashem properly. Kevan dechaza delo kashmiele. So once the Sultan realized Avram is not buying this argument, it's not working. Amarle, so he said to him, Elai davar yegunov, kach shamati me'achori hapargod. He says, there's something for me that I overheard, right? I heard a stolen word, which means I heard something behind the curtain up there in Shemayim that Hashem says, right? He says that the really, that really, ultimately, I want a sheep to be brought as a sacrifice and not Yitzchak. That's what I heard Avram. That's what I heard him say. So therefore, I know Hashem really doesn't plan to do this. So you can give up now. You don't have to do it. So Amar lo kach onshel shel badai Shafilu Amar Emes Ein Shom In Lo. And so Avram said to the Satan, he says, you know what? This is the punishment for a liar. Even when you're telling the truth, nobody's going to believe you. So it could be that you heard that, but I can't trust you because you're a liar. So I'm not listening to you. Reb Levi Amar, Reb Levi says, Achar Devarav Shel Yishmael LeYitzchak, Amar Lo Yishmael LeYitzchak. So he says, what is the Achar Dvarim? What happened? When did the kid happen? After what? It was after the words of Yishmael, what Yishmael told Yitzchak. Amar Lo Yishmael Yitzchak. Yishmael said to Yitzchak, Ani Godol Mimcha B'mitzvos. I'm better than you when it comes to mitzvos. Why? Shata Malta ben Shmonas Yamim. You had a bris milah when you were 8 days old. V'ani ben Shloshis Rishon. I was 13. So it was much harder for me. So I get more schar. I'm better than you. Amar Lo. So Yitzchak said back to Yishmael, Ube'ever echad atam megarabi. Says what? You're going to tell me because of your because of one limb that you're better than me? Im omer li HaKadosh Baruch Hu zvach atzmecha lifanai. If Hashem were to say, sacrifice yourself before me, zoveach ani zoveach miyad, I would do it. I'd be the sacrifice. So therefore, right? Elokim nisa es Avram. That's when Hashem tested Avram that Yitzchak is ready and willing to be the sacrifice. Tanu Rabbanan. Our rabbis are Navi sheidiach beskila. Okay, so a Navi that causes others to do an Aveira for Avodah Zarah, so he gets skila. Okay, that's what Rabbi Shimon Omer bechenek. Rabbi Shimon disagrees with the Rabbanan, says that you're supposed to get chenek.
This sounds like the Nisayon was on, according to the, who's that? Rabbi?
That's right. It sounds like the Nisayon was on Yitzchak.
Right,
right?
not on
It's
Avram.
interesting, right? And I have a word on why that's not so, but it's interesting how to understand this Gemara then. But that's that'll be 15 or 20 minutes, so we won't do it now. Okay. Those who are so he says that a regular telling one person to avodah zarah, that is chenek. But if he's telling somebody the whole nirdi dachas, then he gets skila. Rabbi Shimon Omer bechenek, and Rabbi Shimon says, nope, gets chenek as well. Navi sheidiach beskila. My time of the Rabbanan. Why do the Rabbanan say they get skila? Asya hadacha mimesis. It's from the word hadacha is used from a regular person who's trying to convince others for avodah zarah. Mala holon beskila, just like a person who tries to convince others to do avodah zarah gets skila. Afkan beskila, so too somebody who's using a nevuah to convince others to do avodah zarah also gets skila. Rabbi Shimon Misa, and Rabbi Shimon says he gets Misa ksiva bay. It just says that he gets a death sentence. So a death sentence, without explaining which death sentence we said, is chenek. That's why he says chenek. Stam eina ela chenek.
How would that work? He sees a nevuah.
But he doesn't see nevuah.
He doesn't see, so
Right?
he's a false
He's saying,
prophet.
yeah, basically he's saying he's exactly, yes. So Madichi Nerdachas Beskila, my time of the Rabbanan, why is it that somebody who convinces others to become an irni dachas and worship avodah zarah? Why? What's the rationale behind the Rabbanan? Gamri hadacha hadacha. So again, it's from the word hadacha hadacha. Now, imi mesis, imi navi. You have a choice. You could either learn it from somebody who's convincing others to do avodah zarah, or the other navi shehidiach who convinces others to do avodah zarah as well. Rabbi Shimon Gomer hadacha hadacha mi navi, and so they say it's hadacha hadacha mi mesis who gets skila, and Rabbi Shimon says it's hadacha hadacha and the gzir shav hadacha hadacha from the navi. The ligmar mi mesis. Why doesn't he learn it from the case of somebody who's trying to convince others to do avodah zarah, and therefore give him skila? So the answer is done in mesis rabim, mi mesis rabim, vein done in mesis rabim, mi mesas yachid. The answer is because by the irni dacha situation, it's a public issue. This is a personal one-on-one issue. So therefore, it makes more sense to compare an issue where a navi is doing to convince one person to a circumstance where somebody who is a mesis rabim, this navi who's doing trying to convince a whole city to the circumstance where somebody is trying to convince others of the whole city. So that's a skila case rather than judging him comparable to an individual circumstance where the punishment would be skila. Adrabba, but that doesn't make sense. Done in hedyot mi hedyot, you should compare the circumstance of a person who is not a navi to another person who's not a navi. Vein done in hedyot mi navi, rather than compare the person who is convincing others to an irni dachas, who is not a navi, to somebody who is a navi. So Rabbi Shimon says, came in didiach. 1 second. Remember, this is what Brian was saying. He's not a navi. He's a false prophet. If he's trying to convince others to do avodah zarah, ein l'cha hedyot gadol mizeh. There's nothing that makes him less of a prophet than that. He's just a regular guy. So therefore it makes more sense to compare him to other regulars and therefore give him the punishment of chenek. Okay, Amar Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says, the machlokas, the disagreement between the Chacham and Rabbi Shimon about a Navi who convinces others to do Avodah Zarah, whether he gets skila or chenek, this machlokas that we just discussed, is be'oker haguf, da'avodas kochavim, v'kiyom miktzas. Sorry, be'oker haguf, da'avodas kochavim, is when the Navi says this entirety of Avodah Zarah is permissible, v'kiyom miktzas u'bitol miktzas, and also in a circumstance, if the Navi says part of Avodah Zarah still exists, but part does not. Meaning, he says, you can worship this idol in this way, but not that way. So part of the Avodah Zarah still exists in the Torah, right? One is circumstance, he says, there's no such thing as Avodah Zarah. You can worship whatever idols you want. The other, he says, no, this idol is no good. This idol is fine. That's also, he says, in both of those cases, the machlokas between Rabbi, the Rabbanan and Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Shimon, exists in both of those cases. The Rachmana Amar, right? Because the Rachmana says, min ha-derech, that you convince somebody to go from the way, afilu miktzas ha-derech, even only part of the way, meaning you don't destroy all of Avodah Zarah, even some of it, that is, aval oker haguf deshar mitzvos. However, let's say a Navi were to tell you that an entire other mitzvah doesn't exist anymore. Let's say he was going to say, there's no tefillin anymore. Divrei kol b'chenek, everyone would agree that the punishment is chenek. V'kiyom miktzas u'bitol miktzas debeshar mitzvos divrei kol pater. And if you were going to only nullify part of it, you're going to say there's no shel rosh, but you can still do the shel yad, part of the mitzvah, then you'd be exempt. That's not
the first. Isn't the whole mitzvah to wear both tefillins? Why just?
That's right. So he's only part. He's saying mitzvah tefillin exists. This part of the mitzvah don't do. That's pater. It's prohibited, but it's not a navi. You don't get misa bidei shemayim or chenek for doing it. Right.
So the first one's Baal Tigra. The first.
It's not Baal Tigra. It is. It is.
Don't
It is.
do a mitzvah.
It is a navi, a prohibition of a navi taking away a mitzvah. Right.
So how's that not Baal Tigra?
Because you're saying that applies to regular every people, right? Everybody can't say this mitzvah doesn't exist, right? This is a special that somebody's saying I have a nevuah from Hashem that says we don't do this mitzvah anymore. He's saying it's a horasha. Hashem came to me in a dream and said that this mitzvah doesn't exist anymore.
So I hear
right?
it's a false problem, but it's also
if
be over both. No, at that point, I mean, I'm not, obviously there's only one.
Potentially you could say it might be, but Baal Tigra is not chenek. You don't get chenek you don't get misa for Baal Tigra.
What's the?
It's a lo saseh.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
To remove it.
To do a mitzvah.
And to be Baal Tosef is considered
a lo saseh. Yeah. Right. So
that's why when he added on the tefillin, that's just a lo saseh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right. Okay. So that's why I make a difference. Right. You don't want to escalate everything to that level. Okay. Rav Hamnuna says la lecha zu mitzvah saseh aseh ba zu mitzvah saseh ba zu mitzvah lo saseh. So la lechas in this pasuk, it says la lechas to go after. That's talking about a positive commandment, and ba is a mitzvah lo saseh. Now, v'isal kadaitach ba'avodos kochavim, and if this pasuk then is only talking about that this prohibition only exists when you remove only part of it, only applies to avodah zarah. So then aseh ba'avodos kochavim heichim ishkachas la. That can't be, because the pasuk tells you there's a positive command. There's a way for a positive command for a navi to be violating this. And you can't have it. There's doing avodah zarah is a lo saseh. There's no positive avodah zarah. So Tirgum Rav Chisda, Rav Chisda explains unetantstem. The pasuk tells you that you are supposed to destroy the mizbeachs, the altars of the avodah zarah. That is a positive commandment. So therefore, there is a circumstance where if the navi comes and says you don't have to destroy them. So if that's circumstance, then that could be a circumstance where there's a positive command relating to avodah zarah. So it is only that pasuk only is applicable to avodah zarah, and so therefore a navi, this navi who removes a mitzvah is who's only liable if he does part of an avera or part of a mitzvah only applies to avodah zarah. Other mitzvahs, he has to remove the entire mitzvah, but part of the mitzvah he's pater. Rav Hamnuna Amar, Rav Hamnuna says no. Hamachlokas be'oker haguf bein b'avodos kochavim bein b'shar mitzvos. Rav Hamnuna says no. The way that you got to look at this, he says, I don't agree. This disagreement between Rabbi Shimon and the Rabbanon about uprooting the entire mitzvah is an argument whether it's in avodas kochavim or other mitzvos. V'kiyom mikzas ubitul mikzas davodos kachavim. And as far as upholding part of the mitzvah or none of the mitzvah, that part of the mitzvah, right? Only doing part of the mitzvah, that only applies to idol worship according to everybody. Derachmana Amar, because the pasuk says min haderech, from the way. Afilu mixas haderech, even if you do part of the way, you are in violation. Avakil mixas ubitul mixas. If the navi were to, by a regular mitzvah, say that you should do some of the mitzvah, not other part of the mitzvah, debishar mitzvos divrei kol potter. Everyone would agree to potter, but he disagreed. He says that this argument applies, this argument about whether you get skila or chenek. Really, if you take a look at I think the Art Scroll has a chart of this. The disagreement essentially is in a circumstance with other mitzvos. I think it's on the next page, right? Disagreement on when it comes to other mitzvos applies to the circumstance of when it is another mitzvah where you remove the entire thing, right? According to Rav Chisda, he says that everyone's going to agree that the avera of that everyone's going to agree that you get strangulation in the circumstance where you're removing completely another mitzvah. And according to Rav Hamnuna, he says that's part of their argument as well. Tana Rabbanan. Okay, our rabbis are.
But Kuli Amen look, the three, the complete, the partial, and the complete.
That would they agree. That's
all
correct.
Chayiv Misa. It's just some are
it depends on what that means, right? So they all agree that about what happens with how to explain the Rabbanan and Rabbi Shimon according to when the avera is idolatry, right? It's only other mitzvos where they have a slight machlokas, right? And as far as if you only eliminate part of the mitzvah, everyone agrees you're pater. Okay. If somebody makes a prophecy to uproot something from the Torah, chayiv, you are in violation. If you are keeping up part of the mitzvah and eliminating part of the mitzvah, Rabbi Shimon poter. Rabbi Shimon says you're exempt. When it comes to idolatry, afila umer hayom ivdua l'machar bitlua. This is a circumstance where he's only uprooting part of it. He's saying today you could do it on Sunday, but you can't do it on Monday. So divrei hakol chayev, everyone would agree when it comes to avodah zarah, you are chayev. Abaye savar lo karav chista, or mataritz lo karav chista. Abaye is going to explain this brayso according to Rav Chista, right? Rava savar like Rav Hamnuna. Rava explained this brayso according to Rav Hamnuna, or mataritz lo karav Hamnuna. Since he held like Rav Hamnuna, he explained it like Rav Hamnuna. Let's explain. Abaye savar lo karav chista. Abaye says, here's how it works according to Rav Chista. Or mataritz lo karav chista. He holds like Rav Chista, and this is how he explains the Rav Chista. Hamisnave la kor davar min Torah. If somebody makes a nevuah in order to uproot something from the Torah, then divrei hakol bechenek. Then everybody says that's a regular mitzvah. You're going to get chenek. Right. Everyone is going to agree to that. L'kayim mikzas u'levatzol mikzas. Now, if you're going to uproot part of it and eliminate part of it, so that Rabbi Shimon poter v'hu adin l'Rabbanan. Rabbi Shimon says you're exempt, and the Rabbanan are not going to argue with that. Right. That's also agree. It's exempt. Then we're going to go back and talk about avodah zarah next. Uvavodos kachavim, when it comes to idolatry, afilu amar hayom ivdua l'machar bitlua. Even if in idolatry you do part of the mitzvah, not eliminate the whole mitzvah, where you say today you should worship it, but tomorrow you can't, you'd be chayiv. Then you would be liable. Okay, marked islay umarked islay. What punishment would you receive? Well, that depends on whether you hold that you're supposed to get stoning or you're supposed to get chenek, which is subject to how they interpreted the psukim on the bottom of Pei Tes Amud Beis. Rava savar like Rav Hamnuna. Rava, he interpreted this brisa like Rav Hamnuna. He holds like Rav Hamnuna. Umataritz like Rav Hamnuna. He interprets the brisa like Rav Hamnuna, and he reads it like this: Hamiznavi la kor davar min Torah. Somebody makes a prophecy in order to uproot something from the Torah. Bein ba'avodos kachavim, bein b'shar mitzvos. It doesn't matter whether it is idolatry or anything else. Chayiv. You're going to be liable. Marka dislay, umarka dislay. And what misa are you going to get? Well, that depends. Right. Whether you get skila according to the Rabbani, you get chenek according to Reb Shimon, and that doesn't matter whether it's avodah zarah, that's the avera, or whether it is any other mitzvah. L'kayim mikzas u'vatel mikzas. Now, when it comes to the case of upholding part of the mitzvah and eliminating part of it, Beshar mitzvos, Rabbi Shimon, and when it comes to other mitzvos, not avodah zarah, Rabbi Shimon poter. Rabbi Shimon says you were exempt in that case. The Rabbanan agree with Rabbi Shimon about that. But if you go back to the case of idolatry, even if he says today you can serve it, tomorrow you can't, which is only eliminating part of the way, you would be chayav. Market islay. And what punishment are you going to get? Depending on whether you're Rabbanan or you're Rabbi Shimon, whichever misa you hold of. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yevo, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yosef says in Rabbi Yochanan, B'chol im yomar lecha navi avor al divrei Torah shmalo. Whenever a navi tells you that you should violate a Torah prohibition, you should listen to him. Chutz me'avodas kochavim, except when it comes to idolatry. Shafilu mamid lecha chama be'emtza rakia. Even if the prophet would show you a sign, he would stop the sun in the middle of the sky. Al tishmalo, you cannot listen to him when it comes to Avodah Zarah. Hashem would never tell you to do that. Tanya, we order Bryce. Rabbi Yossi Agli, Rabbi Yossi Agli says, Higia Torah l'sof data shel avodas kochavim. Lafichach notna Torah mem shalaba. The Torah understands how this Avodah Zarah works and how what's going to happen. Therefore, the Torah is given complete dominance over it. Right? There's no circumstance. Hashem's never repealing the Avera of Avodah Zarah. Even if the sun would be stopped in the middle of the sky, al tishmalo, never listen to the prophet to change. The Torah always is right when it comes to that. Tanya, we learn in Brisa. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, Chas v'sholom shakadosh baruch hu ma milchama over ritzono. Why would the sun stop in the middle of the sky? What you're saying is, the Navi's yelling, but Hashem's going to listen to a guy who's trying to convince other people to do Avodah Zarah and stop the sun in the middle of the sky? Ella kigon Chananya ben Ozer. Really, what's going on is a story like the story of Chananya ben Ozer. Shemitchila so Navi emes. At first, he was a valid prophet, and he was stopping the sun in the sky, showing valid signs that his nevuah was real, and it was. Ulevasof, and then he went off the derech. Navi Sheker, he became a false prophet, and as a result, you would think, I'm going to listen to him, because look what the miracles he was able to perform. So therefore I'd listen. The answer is nope. When it comes to Avodah Zarah, that's the end. You don't listen to him. Okay, last line from our Mishnah was, V'zomame bas Kohen, those people who are testifying falsely against a daughter of a Kohen, so she's supposed to get Sreifa. They do not get Sreifa, they get Chenek. Minan immediately, where do I know that from? Amar Rav Acha, Brei Ravika. Rav Acha, the son of Ravika, says, Titania, we learn in a Brisa. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi says, Ma tamad lomar vasisim lo kasher zamam lasos. What do you mean when the pasuk says that you're supposed to do to these witnesses that they schemed like they plan to do to their brother, lasos la'achiv. Lefi shekol, why does it have to say your brother? Lefi shekol azomamin shebatorah zomamehen ubo alehen kayotze mehen. Whenever it comes to any case of idolatry, the woman and the man get the same punishment, right? But not true by a bas kohen. Bas kohen he besreifa vein boala besreifa. The bas kohen gets sreifa, but not the man. That we learned that it was applicable to her, not to him. So zomamin in yodea im lo hukshu im lo hukshu. So then there comes the zomin. Which punishment do you give? Because they testified about this man and the woman, so they're killing both of them. Which misa do they get? Keshu omer, when the pasuk says lasos le'achiv, the one that they scheme to give to their brother, la'achiv v'lo lachoso, the one to their brother, not to the sister. You're given the misa that the brother gets not him. Hadron alach elu hein nechenkin. Hadron alach elu hein nechenkin. Hadron alach elu hein nechenkin ends the 10th parak. Into the final parak, the Mishnah says. We have to start with right? That's what happens when you're another.
Just have the pasuk call you.
This is how we begin. All right.
Very good. Whose idea was that?
Thank you, Remuda. As the sponsor of the week, he is authorized to interject, and we gave him the honors of starting the parak. Kol Yisrael yesh lam chelek liolam haba. Every Jew has a portion in the world to come. Shneimar, the pasuk says, "Va'amcha kulam tzadikim." Your nation are all righteous. Liolam yirshu aretz, and forever they will inherit the land. Natzer mitai masa yadai. That the my planting, my branch, the makings of my hands, aspire, should be glorified. Ve'elu she'ein lahem chelek liolam haba. Now that we said everybody gets it, here's who doesn't. There's always an exception to the rule. Haba. So anyway, this one who does not get olam haba. Ha'omer ein tchias hamesim min haTorah. Anybody who says that there is no place in the Torah that it says that the dead will be revived, right? At the future times, the dead are coming back to life. If you say that's not true, you lose your no chelik and olam haba. Ve'ein Torah min hashemayim. Also, if you say the Torah does not come from heaven, right? Ve'apikoris. Also, if you're an apikoris. Right, the word apikoros, Rashi says that the word apikoros, we're going to explain what it means. Potentially, it comes from the word hefker. Potentially, it's a Greek word, but we'll see what the word apikoros means and what it takes to become an apikoros.
You
right?
really have to know all of.
You have to know all. We'll have to get there, right? Rabbi Akiva says, "Afakori b'sfar machitzonim." If you read external books, outside books, right? What kinds of Greek philosophy is what he says here in the commentary here. You start reading external philosophy books from other religions. So that he potentially mentions exactly how far that goes. V'halochesh al hamakeh. Somebody who gives a whisper, he starts to believe that he's able to heal wounds with psukim and things. By V'yomer, he says, Kol hamachla asher samti Mitzrayim, all of the wounds that I gave to the Egyptians, lo asim alecha, I will not give to you. Ki ani Hashem rofecha, because I am Hashem who heals you. And that's, you start to give these whisperings over people in order to heal them. So Abba Shaul says, Af ha-hoge es Hashem be'os Yosef. Somebody pronounces the 42-letter name of Hashem. Pronounce that, that's the end of your Olam Haba. And some explain that he's actually using the name of Hashem. He's not just saying it, but he's using it to perform miraculous things. Shlosha malachim v'arba hedyotos. There are specifically 3 kings and 4 regular people who lost their chelik in Olam Haba. So I guess it's not that common an occurrence. Shlosha malachim, who are the 3 kings? Yeravam. Yeravam was when after Shlomo died, so the kingdom split, the Yehuda and Yisrael. The first king of Yisrael set up idols in order to be able to get people to prevent them from going to the Beis HaMikdash. So he lost his chelik olam haba. Achav, we've been discussing how terrible King Achav is, and Menashe, he's from the kings of Yehuda, which is not. Oh, the other 2 are from Yisrael. He is the king of Yehuda. He was a really bad guy as well. We'll talk about him. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Menashe yesh lo chelik olam haba. That actually Menashe, no, he did tshuva, and he got his chelik in olam haba. Shneimar, as the pasuk says,
did he get punished for
well, I don't know. Well, he gets punished in the end. Yeah. Vayispalel love. That he davened to Hashem, Vayishma tachanaso, and he heard his prayers, Vayishiveu Yerushalayim, and he was returned to Yerushalayim. Lemachuso, to his kingdom. Now, Amrulo, the rest of the Rabbanan said to Rabbi Yehuda, Lemachuso heshivu, v'lo l'chayam haba. Yeah, he davened and he got his kingship, his kingdom back, but he never got his chelik olam haba back. He was punished in that he lost. Heshiv olam haba lo l'chayam haba heshiv. They didn't return his kingdom in olam, his place in olam haba. Arba hedyotos, who are the 4 non-kings who lost their chelik olam haba? Bilam, right? He's pretty bad Navi, and Doeg, who we'll see, he's the advisor of David. We'll see about of Shaul. We'll see about him. Achitofel, who was the advisor of David. We learned about him. He committed suicide, if you remember, that the Gehazi was the student of Elisha, who was a prophet who's student of Elisha. We'll see what happened with him. Says the Gemara, the Kol Kach Lama. So he says, forward here, get to my page here. Oh, that's because I'm in the wrong one. I was supposed to switch over. So switch over. Okay. So why is it kol kach lama? Why do you get such a bad punishment just because you don't believe that olam haba is in the Torah? You can believe in all. You can believe in tchias hamesim in the Torah. I can believe in tchias hamesim, but maybe it doesn't come from the Torah. I lose my chelik in olam haba for that. Why? So Tana, who call for b'tchias hamesim, lefichach lo yeh lo chelik b'tchias hamesim. The answer is because the rule's like this: if you are not a believer in the miraculous events of tchias hamesim, then you lose your tchias hamesim. Right? That's olam haba. Makes sense, right? Because shekol midos of shel kadosh baruch hu mida keneged mida. Hashem always works this way, mida keneged mida. You don't believe in it, so you don't get it. Right? You don't buy in, so you don't get it. Makes sense. Damar Reb Shmuel Bar Nachmani. Reb Shmuel Bar Nachmani says, Amar Reb Yonasan. How do you know Hashem always works in this way? Mida keneged mida. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, Vayomer Elisha. Elisha says, Shimu devar Hashem. Hashem, listen to what's going on. What happens? He says that this story, this is the great famine that was during the days of Elisha in Shomron. The king of Aram was surrounding the Jewish people, and they were under siege, and they had no food, and they were all starving to death. And they didn't know what to do, and they asked Elisha for help. What should we do? And Elisha said, "Hashem has heard your prayers. This time tomorrow, there's going to be food, plenty of food, and everything is going to be all right. And there's going to be so cheap." And there was a fellow he says, case machar, sa'ah solas b'shekel, v'sasayim sa'orim b'shekel. You're going to be able to buy a whole sa'ah of flour for a shekel or 2 sa'ah of barley for a shekel. It's going to be cheap. Everyone will have plenty of food.
Remember how King Solomon's table used to be back in the day?
I was going to say where there's in the Mishnah Torah we learn, like, I forget what it was. There's certain things that if you don't believe in it, therefore it doesn't exist. Rambam holds. Like, I forget.
By being so Shadim and all these kinds of things.
Right. Is that where it is? It's sort of like
Amida connected Mida?
Right.
Could be, yes. Right. So he says, this is Bishar. So Uksiv, the pasuk says, Vayana Shalish, there was a servant of the king who overheard Elisha giving this prophecy. Nishan al Yodo, he's kind of leaning on his arm. He said, as Isha Elokim Vayomer, Hine Hashem osa arubos b'shamayim. He says, that's ridiculous. If Hashem opened up a big window in the sky, how could it even possibly be? There's no way. Like, even the trucks are going to come. Where we're getting food from? There's nothing here. If Hashem dropped wheat out of the sky, where are we getting all the food from?
Tornadoes that drop remnants.
So it won't. So it can't happen. Vayomer hincharoi beinecha umisham lo tochal. Elisha said, "Look, you're going to see it with your own eyes, but you're not going to be able to benefit from it." Tzadi Amud Beis. Right. So what happened was that there was the besieging army fled. They left all of their supplies behind. Right, and so eventually people opened the door. There were finally some starving people who had saras who go wandering into the camp. They're starving. They said, let's try our best, throw ourselves into the enemy's hands and see if we can win. And they walk in, and there's all this food from the supplies from the army, and nobody's there. So they go and they tell everybody, and everybody comes running out. And everybody found out about the food. They come to the gate. They trample this guy who was standing by the gate, and he dies. So he sees, in fact, that there's plenty of food, but he never benefits from it. Just like because he didn't believe in it. So the Dilma killas Elisha Garvale. How do you know it was the fact that he was that he didn't believe in the food that caused him to die? Maybe the fact is that what caused him to die was that Elisha cursed him, right? Da Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Yehuda said Amar Rav killas chacham afilu achinam he ba. Even when it comes to a chacham, even if it's not for any reason, it still happens, right? We have that by Yaakov Avinu who says that whoever took Lavan's trofim, they will die, right? And then Rachel eventually does die because she took the trofim that Lavan, her father, had. So we see all kinds of, and even if the condition doesn't come true, nevertheless, that we see Yehuda, was punished because he said that he's going to be punished if he doesn't return Yosef. So. If he doesn't return Binyamin, so the klolos of a chacham happens. So therefore, if Elisha said you're going to die, maybe that's why. So im kain, if that was true, lichtov krov misu vayamos, then it would just say that the people trampled him and he died. My bishar. So why did he get trampled by the gate specifically? Al iske shar, because of what he said, because of his lack of belief in the food. That's why he didn't get to participate in the food. Minayin, we'll do one. Minayin l'tchias hamesim min Torah. What's the source of tchias hamesim min Torah? Now that you told me I lose my chelik in olam haba, you're all sitting here going, well, what's the pasuk? You better know it because otherwise you're not getting in. So it says Shenemar. Pasuk says Nesatim mimenu es trumas Hashem la'aron hakohen. You're going to give in the land of Eretz Yisrael. You're going to give your truma to Aaron the Kohen. Aaron didn't live that long. He wasn't alive. He never got to Eretz Yisrael. So lo nichnas Yisrael. Shenosnim lo truma. He never got truma. So what do you think? It says the pasuk says that Aaron's going to get truma in Eretz Yisrael. It never happened. El Malami Chasi Lichios. He's going to come back to life. Yisrael nosin lo truma. And eventually the Jews are going to give him truma. Mikan l'tchias hamesim min Torah. That is the source for tchias hamesim the Torah. Debei Rabbi Yishmael Tana. And the yeshiva of Rishmal, they learn like this: La Aaron, that you give it to Aaron. It doesn't mean literally to Aaron. It's ke Aaron. You give it to a Kohen who's like Aaron. Ma Aaron chaver, af manav chaverim. You're supposed to give it just like Aaron was a Torah scholar. You're supposed to give it to a Torah scholar Kohen. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, as Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says, Amar Rabbi Yonasan minayin she'ein nosen truma lekohen am haaretz. You're not supposed to give truma to a Kohen who's an am haaretz. Shenemar, because why? He's not going to take care of it right, and he's going to eat it when it's tamei, and that's not good. Vayomer lam liyosh v'yerushalayim l'seis manas. Leman yechzeku b'Toras Hashem. Right, you're supposed to give the gifts to those that are going to uphold. So you give it to the Kohanim so that they will uphold the Torah of Hashem. Kol machzik b'Toras Hashem yeshlo manas. Any Kohen who is upholding the Torah of Hashem, he can have a portion of truma. But the Kohanim who are not keeping the Torah, Ein lo manas. They don't get a portion. Amar Rav Acha Barada. Rav Acha Barada says Amar Rav Yehuda. Kol nosin truma lekohen amaretz. If you give your truma to a kohen who's an amaretz, kilu nosin lifnei ari. It's like you're putting it in front of a lion. Ma ari safek doris ve'achol safek ino doris ve'achol. We don't know when a lion attacks its prey. He might attack the prey and eat it right now, or he might store it away until it spoils and then he'll eat it later. Af kohen amaretz. That's what's going to happen with the kohen amaretz. Safek okla b'tara. He might eat it while he's tar. Safek okla b'tuma. He might wait until he's tameh and then eat it. And Rabbi Yochanan says, Af gorim lo misa, and you're going to cause the coin to die that way. Shemar says, pasuk says, Umei subo ki achaluhu. Then he's going to die because he's going to profane the truma. Debe Rabbi Elazar Yaakov Tana Af masio avon ashama. You're going to wind up causing him a sin of guilt. Shemar pasuk says, V'yusam avon ashama be'achlam es kadsheim. You're going to bring him an avera of nashama when he eats their holy things because they are tamei. So it's a good place to stop.
Go ahead.
Sadi on base.